good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you, everyone, for joining us from different parts of the world today. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to our webinar session called Building a Connected Culture for Remote Workers, coming to you from Workplace from Facebook. My name is Samir Chaudhary, and it's my pleasure to welcome all of you today. As we're getting settled in, I'd like to encourage you to go ahead and grab a beverage of your choice, get yourself comfortable. If you have an email that you want to send out or a note that you're about to post on Workplace or anywhere else, please go ahead and wrap that up. Hopefully we're going to have an interactive session. So we want to make sure that this is a learning opportunity for you as well as it's a huge learning opportunity for me. And I really want to encourage you to get comfortable in wherever you are right now, and whether it's on the couch or the seat, wherever. And of course, depending on which time zone you're in right now, you can grab the beverage of your choice. I want to make sure everyone is hydrated the next hour that we get to spend together. And at the same time, we want to make sure that you can get the best of the time that we have together today. So I'm just going to give a couple of minutes as everyone is joining in. So just hang in there and if you want to run quickly, get something, you want to run to the restroom, etc., you can feel free to do that as well. And for all the joiners who are just joining us right now, we're just giving a couple of minutes for everybody to get settled in as we get started. So once again, very, very warm welcome to you. My name is Samir Chaudhary, and I'm going to be your host for the webinar session today. And here we are today to talk about how do you build a connected culture for remote workers. So we're going to go ahead and in a minute, we're going to get started with that. So we're just giving it some time. As I mentioned to those of you who just joined previously as well, and so I'm just going to say that again as you're joining in right now, please feel free to go ahead and get a beverage of your choice, get comfortable wherever you're sitting. And at the same time, if you feel like you want to wrap up anything that you're doing right now, if you were sending an email or you're sending a note out, just go ahead and do that so that we can have your absolute attention, as I'm hoping we're going to make this an interactive session so that I can get to learn from you, as well as I am able to share some of my own experiences of how we're learning as the situation unfolds in front of us. So I think we're almost getting I think we are now ready to get started. So hopefully by now you have something that you will have something to keep yourself hydrated, and at the same time you feel comfortable and you were able to wrap that up whatever you were doing, so that we can spend this time together. So over the course of the next about 50 to 55 minutes that we have together, I want to go ahead and we're going to cover a set of topics. But before we even get started, I want to start by just checking in and just wanted to say to all the learners and the builders who are joining us today to say a very huge thank you. I hope you're keeping safe and you're keeping healthy and you're taking care of your loved ones and you're taking great care of yourself as well. Just a little bit about me. Once again, my name is Samir Chaudhary. I am the global head of HR solutions for Workplace from Facebook. What that really means is, in my career, I spend a lot of my time in working with HR leaders and HR practitioners, as well as C-suite executives around the world, in talking about cultural change and transformation, as well as helping them work with them on their digital transformation journey. It also gives me a great pleasure to be being part of Facebook. It gives me the opportunity to also work along with our own HR teams, as well as learn about how we are learning every day and scaling our own culture in our own journey and growth. A bit about my background: I've spent over 20 years in human resources in different functions and different roles. The most recent one, of course, as I mentioned, I've been over 5 years at Facebook. Prior to that, I was at Microsoft, where I spent a considerable amount of time, about 8 to 9 years. And prior to that with Accenture, and then with GE. So that's just a quick history about my background. I feel extremely fortunate to have had great opportunities, great mentors, and all of them have given me some part of their nuggets of their learnings and experiences that have helped me mature as a professional as well as in my personal life. So in our session today, hopefully what we're gonna cover today is really around how we can all explore how we can be present. We're gonna also explore on as work moves towards remote work and we're adjusting ourselves to the new normal, how we can help prioritize. One of the things that we have now that is on I would say extremely precious now is time. So how do we prioritize our time and how do we prioritize our work? And then how do we provide support that is critical as we manage through this crisis and change? We will talk about a new framework we're going to talk about called the 3Cs approach and how that will help you think through in terms of how you can find, grow, and keep your talent in your organization. So as I mentioned earlier, I really would like to kind of start by talking about what we all are experiencing in terms of change. So from my side, I would say, and this is where I would invite you to make this session interactive, is please go ahead and comment and let us know on how you are feeling today. And what I really am looking forward to hearing from you is just let us know, how you're feeling mentally, how you're feeling physically. You can tell us that, I feel pretty energetic and I'm kind of settling in, adjusting to this new normal of operating. It could also mean that I am still dealing with this change. I am trying to balance my personal and work life, and I feel I'm processing this at my end. Or you could just say, I'm struggling. I just haven't been able to grasp through all this change, and it is a lot. Some of us might even experience a set of loneliness. Some of us are going through change in terms of how do we manage everything at home. So, we're still working through that change. So please go ahead and comment and let us know on how you're currently feeling. It would really, really make this session super helpful. Again, this is going to be a private part of the conversation, so I'm not going to share any specific results on how everyone is feeling. I'll start by sharing about myself. I actually feel extremely, I am extremely privileged and thankful for, to the fact that I'm feeling healthy. I feel safe in my house. I am in California, and I have, my family is doing well, and we're able to go ahead and take care of our children. And, as we transition them to online learning, as well as adjusting to making sure we are drawing boundaries and a schedule so we can manage through all of that. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. I'm sure I'm learning every single day, trying new experiments and new things and trying to learn through this change. So absolutely dealing with it one day at a time and just being grateful for being able to feel healthy and being able to navigate through this. So let's talk about change. The way we'd like to break this down is how I'd like to share this is around there are 4 phases we believe of change that we're all experiencing right now. So we went through the React change where we all went ahead and immediately organizations pulled their employees back home. Governments started shutting down their countries and requesting businesses to stop operating. So that was the React phase, which is where we saw a lot of organizations trying to take care of their employees, first and foremost, their families, and then, of course, their businesses. The next is around adjust phase, where we are seeing where people are adjusting to working from home and remotely, making sure they have the right infrastructure, making sure they're able to go ahead and support their employees as we're adjusting to this, and identifying again on how we can continue to stay productive and operative, but at the same time, first and foremost, making sure that we are taking care of everyone. The next is around re-emerge. We are already seeing this where in most parts of Asia where the COVID-19 had broken earlier and they are probably slightly ahead of the other regions. So we're seeing the re-emerge phases where people are returning to work or businesses are opening up. Of course, this is looking a lot different now as people are coming through. So there are a lot of different changes there that organizations are trying to make sure that they're able to keep their employees safe as they're transitioning back through the re-emerge phase. And then the final phase is really new normal. As we transition into this phase, it's going to be the new way of operating. So I am in my conversations with a lot of leaders, a lot of HR leaders, especially CHROs. They share that a large part of their workforce, they're reevaluating their business model, they're reevaluating their people model. and the people strategy on how they want to make sure that they can, whether they do need to bring all their employees back to work, does it mean that they can continue to operate remotely for forever? And what does that really look like? What are the implications towards the business? What are the implications towards the employees? And then, of course, what are the implications in terms of their organizational policies and structures? So as we navigate through these 4 phases, today I'm going to touch more upon the second and the third phase, which is really around the adjust and the re-emerge. And the way we want to talk about that is how our approach on what we call the 3 C's approach to manage remote workers. I call them the 3 C's. It's really around care, culture, and community. When I talk about each of these phases, it really talks about the first and foremost is how are we showing up in the organization to take care of our employees, the care that we express as leaders in the organization, as HR professionals in taking care of our employees. It could be in the way of benefits. It could be in the way of making sure we are coaching and training our leaders and managers to be able to support their frontline employees. To be able to go ahead and manage their teams effectively and continue to engage with them. And finally, it's about how do we create a sense of inclusion and belonging. But I'll dive deeper into this in the coming part of the session. The second is around culture. So what are the different elements around your culture, around defining your purpose and values in the organization and helping people align to those? And then again, it's also about how are you making sure that you're going to keep your people engaged by addressing some of the core things that define a core part of your culture, which is how are you giving them clarity around that purpose? How are they going to align towards and giving them hope, as well as being able to manage their performance? So keeping them aligned towards their goals, the productivity, at the same time, also making sure that they are aligned towards the organizational purpose and values. And finally comes down to community. How are we coming together and leveraging the power of a community? That is where we lean towards and lean on the hardest of moments that we all experience. These are the people that we relate to, who look like us, who feel like us, who can understand us. So going back to that source of inspiration, the part where we can build our resilience and how we can come together and take care of ourselves, and as we can also take care of our peers and coworkers as we all navigate through this change. So again, as I was talking about getting more deeper into the conversation around care, this is again an opportunity where I would encourage you, if you have questions or thoughts, just go ahead and type those questions in. As we go through the session, I will take a moment and we will come back to you and answer those questions. So I do promise that towards the end of the session, I will take more questions and we will go through and make sure we answer those for you. So talking about care, as I mentioned earlier, it's really about expressing care and how you show up. I think it's very clear that employees, everyone needs to, starting from, I'm going to break it down in 3 layers. It's starting from the leadership. It's how leaders are responding, the CEO of the organization coming in front and recognizing about what we're all experiencing in terms of change. At the same time, the managers creating the infrastructure and making sure that change and the care is being expressed on a daily basis, on a face-to-face with their employees who are on the front lines and in those intimate conversations one-on-one. And then it comes down to how we are efficiently being able to manage team check-ins and team engagement. But more importantly, how are you making sure that your team stays productive at the same time you are checking in on their health and well-being? And finally, as we have gone down towards more just the way we are interacting right now, as we're looking at talking through either on voice or video, which is where we are zooming into someone's, physically zooming into your face. You are in a virtual environment. You would probably miss out 90% of the body language, which is core part of your communication. So people cannot see you as much in terms of your whole body language, which means it's even much harder to be able to go ahead and read people and understand some of that, which means inclusion becomes even more critical. There are also some tenets around how people are of different, people operate in a virtual environment, which is, you have extroverts and introverts. And there are some implications there as well that I will talk more deeper as I go deeper into the subject on how you can then think about how do you create a neutral environment, how are you making sure you're making everybody feel inclusive, despite what their status might be in the organization, where their personal status is, and how making sure you create a sense of connection and belonging through that. Let's talk about culture. So as I mentioned, it really comes down to defining clear values and purpose. And culture also translates to how your organizational values show up now. So from all the way from leaders to managers to employees, it comes down to how are you creating as part of a learning culture and a learning agility in your organization. Traditionally, we've seen that learning is one of the key parts where people are looking at organizations who can invest in them and continue to make sure they create opportunities for them to be able to come through this and continue to be productive. So these are your most prized possessions and resources, and how can we, even in the people function, help people create that learning agility for them and reskill them so they can stay relevant, they can continue to contribute and stay productive. Performance check-ins is about how we can, it's so important for us to make sure that we can align on giving clarity to people around those, around the goals of the organization, but most importantly, making sure that we are giving feedback and keeping those channels of communication open one-to-one and giving people clarity on what their goals are and what good looks like in terms of when they are achievable, when they can drive impact in the organization. And then virtual onboarding. So how are we integrating the new talent coming into the organization? It is becoming challenging as new people are coming in. They don't have the luxury of experiencing your culture now physically in the environment. So how are you making sure that you are integrating them and onboarding them virtually and creating a sense of community for them so they can continue to experience your culture and your values in action, and they can continue to build a network, the organic network that they had the pleasure to do, which was much easier in a physical setup, in a physical environment. And we talk about how you can then measure employee sentiment. And again, an important aspect on how do you make sure that you are measuring and tracking that employee sentiment on a regular daily basis. So and also this is going to be important in context of how you can provide more signal to the leadership on how your culture is responding, how people are responding on a daily basis and a weekly basis. Finally, building a sense of community. As I mentioned earlier, it really comes down to how are we driving that sense of connection, that sense of community that is coming together on shared experiences. One of the things that I get very humbled about is one of the groups that I'm part of at Facebook called COVID Stories and Discussions. It's a group that really is about employees coming in, sharing their experiences around what's happening and how they're processing around their own COVID stories. It could be their friends and family or extended family who are experiencing, who are going through COVID right now, and their experiences and how they're navigating some of those challenges. It also is about how you're building resilience. One of the things I really admire here is the way Sheryl Sandberg has called out in her book called Option B. Sheryl talks about building resilience and resilience being a muscle that you can develop over a period of time. And she also has given a special excerpt about on resilience specific to the COVID crisis as part of her book in Option B. So that just came out about a week or 10 days ago. I would definitely encourage you to go ahead and search for it, read it, and I found it extremely helpful as well. And then we talk about health and wellness. It really comes down to, when I think broadly about wellness, I like to break it down into 3 areas, which is how are you taking care of your wellness, which is your physical wellness. How is your health doing, and how are you making sure that you have a sense of community where people can either work out together, they can find other routines and interests that you have, they can reach out to their peers and interest groups that will keep them physically healthy. The second aspect is mental health. Mental wellness has become extremely, extremely critical. Initially, we had almost 1 in 4 people who were suffering from some kind of mental illness or mental health challenges. And now we believe that it's going to be every second person. So every other person is going to experience that. And COVID has only accelerated this change. And so I think the investment in mental health, wellness is going to be, and mental health is going to be core and finally comes down to financial well-being and financial wellness. So we are seeing a lot of research around people looking at figuring out and making sure that they're able to provide for their families and their loved ones. They have a strong, they're able to go ahead and have a strong plan in place so they can plan for the future and the uncertainties that this crisis has brought about. So I like to bracket those 3, and we'll talk more about how you can actually help kind of navigate through some of those changes and share some experiences and examples with you. So again, coming back to the 3 C's approach, it comes down to the care, culture, and community. I'm going to go ahead and pause here and just check in to see if everyone seems to be doing fine. Please feel free to use the comment section on the right-hand side of your screen. In the chat column, you can actually just chat in and just type in if you have anything that you want to ask or anything that is not clear. Hopefully, you're still tracking with me with the pace as we're going through this. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions that you might have. I'm going to go ahead and share some examples now and go deeper in terms of sharing some thoughts on how you can practically apply these learnings on a day-to-day basis. So let's talk about recognition as part of care. Again, recognition is something that we were consistently being challenged with. It was one of the biggest levers, I used to say, for employee engagement. What's happened with COVID, it is only manifold in terms of how, it's manifold in terms of the challenges it now faces, which is we thought that 80% of the organization or 82% of the organization based on Gallup survey was disengaged. And recognition is one of the big levers that was involved because people just did not feel appreciated and recognized for the work they were doing. Well, guess what? That number is only increased, which means now we have to step up making sure that we are recognizing people's effort. We're recognizing how they're navigating this change, and we are doing this more real time. So if you were initially recognizing people on a weekly basis or at least once a week, I would say you probably have to make that more of a daily practice. Look at the small and the big things that people are doing, and it's important for you to go ahead and recognize that. Of course, here is an example of where you can just either create a group called Recognition Ad, or you can use any kind of environment where you can just make sure that you are being thoughtful and you can tag your employees and you can recognize them specifically by calling them out. Of course, within workplace, what we try to do at Facebook is that you can basically tag anyone by their names, and it instantly sends a notification to their manager and lets them know and lets the employee know that they're being recognized for the specific impact that they've had. The other one I would say it's important has become is really recognition from a point of making it personal. So if recognition was important, making it personal is the part that actually defines the success and failure in my experience. And when I say that making it personal, I mean there are 3 questions you must ask. When you're recognizing someone, please go ahead and state why are they being recognized. So if you need to coach your managers and leaders, please educate them and tell them about these 3 questions around how they should think about why are they recognizing them, what was the impact of the work that they had. So not about just the activity they did, but really what was the impact of the work that they did. And then finally, it comes down to what company value did it exhibit. Aligning your recognition to your organizational values has a much deeper impact towards creating a sense of connection and also aligning to your goals, organizational goals, and long-term, and create a sense of belonging. So again, one of the important things here also is to make sure you not only use one platform or one opportunity, you have to go ahead and drive recognition in multiple ways across the organization. Given the different ways you can do that is, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually tag people, you can send them a note, you can go ahead and make it extremely personal. You can celebrate them by going in and assigning badges to them. So that way it becomes even more, they can actually see the physical recognition in the virtual environment. And at the same time, also going live or live streaming your ceremonies, which is giving people the platform and opportunity to be able to recognize more publicly, whether it's live streaming this using either Workplace Live or other platforms, to where you can actually talk about your monthly, quarterly, yearly winners and recognizing them on a consistent basis. So this is about, again, creating that sense of belonging and appreciation for the work that people are doing and the impact that they're having. Now, one of the things we do believe that when you actually do live award ceremonies, of course, with Workplace, it gives you the opportunity where you can ask live questions and you can see the engagement happening on right when you are actually having the ceremony. You could also record this and actually then stream it, but live is what I think is what people really look forward to, given the level of authenticity it brings in, the realness of having that in-moment recognition and that engagement across the organization. You also have the opportunity, as we just went through giving Tuesday just happened. You could also go ahead and use the opportunity to live stream any charities that you are funding or events that you're hosting to, again, appreciate and recognize people who are contributing towards that, and of course, aligning it to the way your organizational and corporate social responsibility and values are. Let's talk about manager check-in. This is again an opportunity where the first thing you want to do is we recommend is first, and something we're also doing even within our own at Facebook, we recommend is do the personal check-in. So even if it's a 30-minute one-on-one or a 1 hour one-on-one, the first thing 5 to 10 minutes you want to spend is just checking with people to see how are they doing today. So today is the underlying word, is asking people how are they doing today. Sometimes I even encourage that managers to actually do check-ins, not once, but actually twice a day, depending on where people are. Especially if you are a new hire, I would encourage managers to actually check in with their new hires twice a day at least, to know that they're doing okay. Please remember that you were probably doing this in a physical environment earlier, which means you were just passing by and you were doing the same thing earlier, but now you don't have that luxury. You don't have that physical space anymore, and you don't have opportunities to pat people on the back and just give a smile and pass them through the corridor and say, hey, how are things going? How are you doing? You're not able to do that anymore. So you do need to spend extra time to be able to do that. The next is, again, as part of the check-ins, please ask these, think about these few questions here, is really understanding, what people's work requirements are, what are they working with, what are the challenges they're experiencing right now, and asking them what help do you need. And again, here, prioritization becomes extremely important. Please remember that, time is so critical and so precious now, as people are trying to multitask and do multiple things, managing their personal life, managing their professional life, all bundled together without specific boundaries on time, predefined boundaries on time. So which means people are blending into their personal and professional life. So you got to go ahead and help them focus, as well as drive clarity and alignment on what good looks like. Coming down to team engagement, this is again an opportunity where to go ahead and make sure that you are able to send a brief and before the meeting starts around what are the objectives and goals. So just documenting, creating a group for team that you might have. So having a centralized group, if you already have Workplace, you could do it in Workplace or whatever platform you use. Having a dedicated group for driving team engagement and centralizing all your information in one place, making sure you have a planned agenda before the meeting, you know what goals and outcomes for those meetings are, so that people can actually prep in and you can make those discussions a lot more effective. As you get into those discussions, start the meetings by doing a quick personal check-in. I strongly recommend at least once a week do a personal check-in, not only in your one-on-one, but also as a team collectively. It creates that sense of community, but it also creates that common sense of understanding that we all are sharing our experiences. And if someone is feeling low, then automatically others on the team will pick that up and they will create a sense of they may reach out or create a sense of support group. So they know that they have their team members and they have their backs and they can be there for their support. I mentioned about recognition. The other one is, again, you've got to celebrate the small and the big moments. You probably were doing this in a physical environment earlier, which is, again, whether there are small moments and small victories on a daily basis and small wins, again, it's also an opportunity to remember you've got to celebrate the small and the big ones. And calling them out is extremely important. So as you talk about in your meetings, whether you open the meetings or even at the time when you're closing the meeting, end on a high note and try to make those moments special for people, right? As you're doing this as a manager and a leader. Again, having weekly fun challenges in a team groups is something that we're seeing, is kind of picked up a lot, whether you are having, doing some kind of a social interaction or planning for some social gathering, whether it's using some kind of a gaming or just, running some kind of a pub quiz, etc. So you could do either a quiz, you can do some fun moments, you can have someone come in and actually share pictures about their childhood if they feel comfortable. And then finally, Friday on my mind. This is a practice that I learned from one of my colleagues a couple of years ago, and she did this brilliant job. And she would actually write down what was. We used to call it Friday on my mind, and it was really around talking about how the week kind of went, what was really top of mind, and I would say that break it down into 3 different ways, which is what is top of mind, where the business is going, and maybe one thing that they learned that particular week. It could also be that one of the challenges that they're experiencing and how they're processing it. And it became one of the most read pieces. People really look forward to that post when it would come out, and it actually had such a strong following. I thought that was a great way for leaders as well as managers and individuals to actually connect at a very human level. Let's talk about inclusion and belonging. So when I talked about inclusion and belonging, it really is about making sure that, inclusion has become so critical and important. As I mentioned earlier, it's about how do you manage people who are introverts and extroverts especially in a remote working scenario. So you got to acknowledge that not everybody is comfortable coming in front of a screen, having it completely zoomed into their face, where you can actually even see you can see close expressions and having their absolute attention at that moment. But also keep in mind, not everyone is extremely savvy of being able to speak up in a virtual environment, especially when everyone is kind of trying to talk and trying to make their point and sometimes talking over each other. So as the leaders and managers and team members, it's extremely important to make sure that you have given everybody an opportunity to speak up and listen to them. And so that again becomes an important point of just reinforcing that particular behavior and driving that inclusion into the and being thoughtful and mindful when you are in a group setting or in a group discussion. On a one-on-one basis, I strongly also encourage managers to understand that they have to be able to drive that inclusiveness to give people the safety, psychological safety, and permission to let people know it's okay on where they are and how people are processing this change. And as they're navigating through this new normal, that it's okay for them to take some time to take care of themselves as well. Centralizing resources, the first and foremost, as I would say, is that it's really around, everyone is trying to make sure that they're able to provide their employees the right information and centralize that. So I like to look at it from a perspective of making sure that we have the latest benefits information, latest information that you're providing them as a centralized resource and one place and one source of truth. If they're going to require 8 to 10 clicks, then you pretty much have lost the opportunity here, I would say. So think again in terms of how easy it is for people to be able to access this. Can they go ahead and access it on their mobile devices? And can I get all the information I need so that I can get my work done? At Workplace, we recently released something called the Knowledge Library, which is again a centralized repository. I would call it necessarily an intranet replacement, but it actually does centralize. You can add links to it. You can add text to it, and you can add all your information in one centralized place. So if you have any COVID-related resources people want to access on their mobile devices, it becomes a lot easier to use the Knowledge Library to be able to have all that. And more importantly is discoverability. So it actually helps you easily discover information very easily through that. And then when I think about inclusion from a leadership standpoint, it really comes down to how we're making sure that the executives are hosting live sessions. Something that we are doing ourselves is having weekly Q&As, with Mark, where he talks about organizational priority. He checks in with people on how they're doing, and also just reinforcing, what we are doing and giving back to the community, how we're supporting businesses, as well as how we're supporting our own employees and culture. It really is a great reinforcement in terms of defining a purpose and centralizing the organization and anchoring them to the core values of the organization. But seeing a leader showing empathy and sharing experiences, and at the same time answering live questions as they come through, it really has become a source of energy for me and a source of inspiration that has personally helped me as well as I look forward to these sessions and can align with my leadership. So what I like to summarize here is diversity, inclusion, and belonging really comes down to making sure you're able to listen to your employees by giving them a voice, creating that psychological safety and giving them permission to, as they're navigating through this change and process this change. And then finally, giving the sense of community. People are really looking for their sense of community where they can reach out to people that they feel comfortable with and they can ask and relate to them, ask questions, and feel that sense of bonding. Let's talk about culture. So we're going to transition here to talk about a few things around culture. Now, culture again comes down to what we talked earlier about and picking up from purpose and values. It comes down to how you're prioritizing that. So I'll start with talking a little bit about learning. And from a learning standpoint, we see that this is the learning model that we have internally we recommend, which is we feel that the learning model has transitioned over the course of the many years. So the last time when this learning model was formed and introduced was a 70-20-10 that everyone is familiar with in 1975. But times have changed, and we introduced a new concept called there are 4 parts to learning in the learning model. So it's on the job, which is 60%, it used to be 70%. Peer learning still continues to be 20%, but there's a new component called community learning, which is 10%. And then of course we have structured learning that we used to traditionally call in classroom or now on-demand learning as well. So the 10% community learning, and as the years unfold, we will see as we come through this crisis that 10% is even going to be much further along in my view, and something that we are all learning through. So we look at our community where we want to learn from each other And the first times, whether it's to do with the crisis and getting information around health and safety, we all are reaching out to our own communities to find out more. Whether it's financial well-being or well-being for our health, we reach out to a community to understand how everyone is doing and getting recommendations for them and how they're managing through this. So let's talk about how you can practically apply some of these experiences and learning. So it starts with group learning. Here you can talk about which is where you can centralize all your learning experiences by creating a centralized group or report and just having people share their learnings. This is again authentic, organic learning happening across the organization. It could be leaders coming in sharing notes about how, about their purpose, organizational values. They could talk about organizational priorities, or they could just share about their experiences, good and bad experiences. That would be extremely helpful for them. It could also be, people are doing interviews and they want to share about some of the experiences on how they've done running their virtual interviews, etc. Again, these are great opportunity to also share leadership live videos and be able to curate the content on an ongoing basis. So this is really where you can bring the power of your group learning across your organization, irrespective of levels or functions and roles that people perform. Learning units is another feature that is currently available. But learning units is really how do you organize your learning structures, which is taking the content and breaking it into small parts and then organizing it in a thoughtful way. Learning units is just one of the functionalities that we have here, which is basically organizing your content in short bite-sized videos or to be able to consume in a short, whether it's text or picture format. And then looking at different ways and how do you make sure you can drive that continuous learning, which is how you can quickly have the learning agility to edit the content that is relevant. So as things emerge and change, you also want to be able to have the flexibility. You don't have to revamp the whole learning module, but you can just take a small component of it, change it, and be able to push it out to your learners and being able to have them process it and learn and share feedback. And then finally, how do you share their organizational priorities and drive that pure learning across the front line? So again, one of the things for frontline here is extremely important is giving people access on their mobile devices or on demand where they can go in and learn through those micro learning experiences. So one of the best parts about a structured part of this learning and micro learning really is around time, and time being such a high value commodity right now. It really comes down to how you can help people through those creating short modules and content. You like to use the word just creating short videos, whether they're 2 to 5 minute videos, and helping people learn through those experiences. So think of going live and recording on a mobile device and just having, you don't need a full-blown video infrastructure to record stuff, which is your CEO can go live, your leaders can go live. Even if you are creating content, you can just do like a 2 to 5 minute short video, record it and be able to then stream it, or you can just go live and have a conversation and use that live video as which is going to be available to you at a later point, being able to stream it across the organization. This is also becoming more important right now to be able to giving the people the opportunity to create communities of learning as well, which could be skill-based. So if you want to build a specific area of skill, whether it's manager capability or functional skill, or specifically or generically more organizational skills, let's say creating a training for bias training, or you want to go ahead and do manager training, or you want to just go ahead and help people around health and well-being. So you can do all kinds of things around creating learning communities, as well as creating mentorship circles. Here you can go create a group on mentorship circles, and at the same time, which is I call it having shared experiences of mentors and mentees coming together and sharing some of their experiences on what they've learned, what's going well, what's not going well. But at the same time, also giving people an opportunity to be able to have a more private conversation one-on-one, which is where the mentor and the mentee can create a private or a secret group where they can have a more intimate one-on-one conversation. And it's easy because I have it on my phone. If I'm going through something, I have a question or I have a thought that I want help on, I can just quickly pop up and just open up on my chat, and I can just have that quick one-on-one conversation and reach out to someone for help. So let's transition and talk from learning to performance check-ins. This is really around something that we learned is how do you make sure you are able to do regular performance check-ins, which is aligning people on priorities, understanding what the execution model is, and giving people I call it giving permission, but it's really around creating opportunities to ask for help. When you give people the permission to ask for help, it really is important because there's a lot of anxiety around how is my performance going to be measured, what does good really look like, and how am I going to be job secure? And if it is, then how do I make sure that I can continue to keep performing and how do I balance that with everything else that I need to also do to take care of my loved ones as well as myself? How do you write clarity around goals? So from not only from an organizational level, but again at a manager level and a team level, and then finally breaking down at an individual level. How are you driving those performance check-ins to make sure you're providing the clarity? It really comes down to how do you building connections and providing people the right information, which is where people are collaborating across and encouraging people to drive this collaboration. This is important from a remote work perspective. So every time you end a meeting or you're closing out on a discussion, it's so important to tell people and make sure that you already checked in to see that they actually have someone, that they have a connection on who they can connect with to be able to solve their problem or to be able to execute on one of the tasks that has been assigned to them. Remember, this is something that we all had physically in an environment. We would be able to just ask someone sitting next to us saying, hey, I was working on this. Who do you think I should talk to? They don't have that luxury anymore. Since they're remote, it's something that you would have to be extremely thoughtful about and more proactive about. And then, of course, again, it comes back to that psychological safety, just making people know that they're fine, they're safe, and especially when they're talking about their performance, and just giving them the sense of reassurance of what this could look like, what is not. Again, here again, it's being honest is so important, but at the same time, psychological safety and giving just that reassurance is so critical and important. So let's transition and talk about virtual onboarding. Here we're now moving from performance to virtual onboarding. And here it's what I would want to touch upon is around starting the conversation on virtual onboarding starts the moment people actually get their new hires and their offer. So once they become the new hires who have an expected date to join, is how can you make sure you're creating that sense of community and bonding, but also giving them clarity of providing them all the information they need. So you can use what we call as create a group for them. We call it a multi-company group, but actually creating a group for them called a pre-onboarding group, and then getting everybody together on that pre-onboarding group and giving them one source of information on what does the day one look like, what to expect on that day, and giving them all the information they need to be able to submit and who to reach out to for help. This is where you are already creating a community, but you're also helping your onboarding resources to be able to manage efficiency and effectiveness. At the same time, you also have an opportunity here to be able to share public resources that are available that you can share with them even before they've joined. So you really want to get them a flavor of your culture, your values, and you want to give them an experience of being able to connect with your leaders. So here you can actually have a CEO go live into the group and being able to share and just welcoming them, just letting them know that they're going through this change. You just want to welcome them to the organization. They don't have the luxury of being there physically, but they really want to be there with them virtually. And then on day one, you basically transition them once they have their corporate email IDs, you can transition them into an onboarding group. You can kind of create a group dedicated to all the new joiners, and you can give them all the information that they would need and creating like a virtual experience on day one, which is having your leaders start on the day by going live into the group, sharing their thoughts and experiences, and then sequentially working through that and being able to give them an opportunity to ask questions, being able to go ahead and connect with each other and being able to physically see each other virtually in this environment. So this is a great way where you can actually not only host your experience of onboarding on day one, but you can also build out from there onwards, being able to go ahead and build a 30, 60, and 90-day plan. So you can actually have a virtual plan that you can share in this particular group so that the learning kind of is on an ongoing basis. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, learning units, you can also have training videos. People can have these are the set of things they need to accomplish in the first 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And once again, knowledge library is where you can also centralize all your onboarding resources. So you can, if you already have learning content, you've created the onboarding content you can easily add this to your onboarding groups by creating a knowledge library. You can create a section and you can have all the benefits, you can have all the policies, you can have information on how to go ahead and request for things, how to get access to information on resources that they might need to be able to operate in their jobs, and also on who to reach out to in case they need help. So again, that's where you can create and delight people by creating this great onboarding and virtual onboarding experience. And finally, here in onboarding, I would say is the first most important thing really is community. This is the part where I always tell that you have to go ahead and tell people, find your community. Really it's about introducing them to your employee resource groups or interest groups. Some of the examples you see in the screen right now is about your the groups that you see here is some of these are different ethnicity-based groups or interest-based groups or background-based groups. You have the Veterans Act group, you have the Asians Act group, you have the Latin group, you have, your LGBTQ groups, etc. So how do you drive that sense of community and also at the same time interest-based groups where people have specific interests or hobbies that they can join in? Again, that gives them that sense of community up front, and they feel like I have someone that I can reach out to. I have the sense of amazing community that I've just joined. And we're seeing this a lot more in the Women Ag group, the Black Ag group, and other groups are really becoming that source of inspiration and belonging, and is creating that sense of fulfillment for people at an individual level as they are learning that they have this amazing support group and people that they can lean on to beyond just their immediate team. I mentioned, and this is another part where we look at in terms of how are you managing the sentiment in the organization. So this again goes back to doing a sentiment analysis around, doing a quick micropulse check-in. So, we used to annual surveys, biannual surveys. This is about doing a short pulse on a weekly basis. You could also run this post an event. You can do a short pulse, run a quick micropulse, which comes through from a work chat with 3 questions, yes and no. Get a quick response on how people are feeling, just checking in to see how they're responding to your strategy, the shift in terms of where the organization is going, or sometimes it's just about making sure they have all the support that they need to stay healthy and to stay productive. And if they need help, then they can reach out to you as well. This also gives you insight, because what I like here is that the speed at which you can give feedback and inform your leadership so they can be proactive in their messaging when they're reaching out to the employees, whether you're hosting town halls or you're hosting other events. So this is about giving insights on the company's sentiment. And in this scenario, you can actually check if you're, of course, on Workplace, it gives you the opportunity where you can see the post, you can see the level of engagement, you can see how many people have viewed the post, liked the post, reacted to it, comments. At the same time, you also have the opportunity then run short polls, and they can be automated in a way that the same person doesn't keep getting the same thing again and again. So you can also space it out to get a sample size of your organization and pulse them. So let's talk about the final part, which is community. Community really comes down to as I mentioned earlier, is about talking about some of the stories. So something that I got inspired really is about, the group that I mentioned to you is around COVID stories. So we have couple of groups here that I'm going to touch upon. One is, of course, the COVID stories and discussions group, where employees are just coming in and sharing their stories. Another one is where I saw these amazing group, which is what we call the multi-company group. These are organizations from all over the world who are using Workplace are coming in and sharing their stories on how they're dealing with their COVID crisis, how their employees, how they're making sure their employees stay engaged and connected. So I encourage you, I'll share the link with you in a couple of minutes. So you can actually go ahead and join if you feel you want to join those groups and communities. And it's amazing to see what different initiatives and people are doing. And it also gives you inspiration on things and ideas that even you can do in your organizations. But this is also, again, giving an opportunity for people to open up, to know that these things are important and they matter. And it also gives you the opportunity to know that I'm not all by myself in this. Remember when I mentioned at the beginning of the session about loneliness? This is such an important piece, which is giving people that sense and helping them that sense of bonding and knowing that they're not alone and they have people that they can lean on to and share their experiences with. Building resilience and well-being. So let's talk about that, which is, again, having a group on a dedicated space, as I mentioned earlier, for building resilience. Something that I have found extremely powerful is something at Facebook we do also is having a dedicated group, which we call Building Resilience and people are joining in this group. It's an open community, an open group where people can join in and share experiences. Here you can see, people talk about vulnerability, share some of their experiences on how they're doing sessions with each other, on how they can build that resilience and muscle, and how they can deal with some of the change. I also recently saw some amazing stuff around how people are using and clarifying what resilience really means for them and sharing examples on practices that they're doing. And what started off as at an individual level, people just sharing stories, became a group activity. Now people are coming and forming and hosting events virtually and coming together. So they're doing group activities together. And that is, again, creating that sense of community and connection with people that is helping them navigate through the change. Then it comes down to the health. As I mentioned earlier, there are 3 different kinds of well-being. I look at health, which is broken down into physical and mental, and then well-being as well also includes, your financial health as well. So here we are seeing, having dedicated spaces and groups for people, whether you want to host meditation sessions, which is where you can see in the screenshot here. People are hosting community sessions where they are meditating, they're learning, self-awareness sessions, and they're learning people on which, faith do you belong to, or we have interfaith groups that are coming up and people are really leaning on and sharing so they can, as a community, they can be together, navigating through those experiences and then learning together through the experiences. Well-being is a lot about a combination of fun things. So one of the things that I really like out here is Start Working from Home Meals group. That has become extremely fun, which is where people are sharing their experiences about how they're learning new culinary skills if they've never cooked before, but also just sometimes, I just don't know how I'm gonna, what my lunch looks like. So people are sharing around, hey, I just had a bar for lunch, or I had this, I burnt a steak, or I burnt, my food today. This is what I learned. And then people are sharing recipes and experiences. What started as just a small fun exercise immediately when, spread across the organization, and now everyone is kind of leaning in and kind of sharing this and making it fun. And so this is where people again find the sense of connection, saying, I can empathize with what that experience really is, and I can connect with you on this. So those are all the, just kind of summarizing here in terms of, the different ways that you think about the culture, cause, and community. But there are some examples here that I just shared with you. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over and talk about some questions, and then also share with you some resources on where you can come together and talk about the, how you can join some of our communities. So let me go ahead and look at some of the questions that have come up. I see a lot of questions that have come up. So first of all, I just want to thank all of you for just sharing your ideas and thoughts, and just asking questions for the session and staying engaged through this time. We have about 10 more minutes, so I'm just going to go ahead and spend this time. So if you have more questions, just keep typing in and sending them to us. So we'll try our best to address them right now. If we can't get through all of them, then we will try our best to follow up with you at a later point as well. So let's look at the first question out here that I have is that I'm going to talk about is, so how do we know if we are showing enough care to our employees? So yeah, it's a great question. First of all, thank you so much, for asking that question. And I just want to compliment you. It's a great question. It's hard to say how to measure on how much care you express. I think what's more important, as you think about how you measure care, it really comes down to understanding on how people experience care, right? So care is something where you really want to be able to have leaders show authenticity in their leadership, on understanding, which is, how am I taking care of my employees? If you feel confident about what are the kind of benefits and support structures you created? What are the avenues what are the avenues you created for people to search, ask for help? Or what is the signal that you're getting around the feedback on how people are responding when you're giving them information or sharing information? And if you have created support groups for them, what is the level of engagement you're getting on those? And if you're not getting enough signal, that means there is more that needs to be done. Maybe it's a different kind of a format you need, whether, you created a group, you've shared resources with people, but you're not getting enough signal, which means you're not getting enough traffic. So it's always good to kind of look at different ways. One of the things I recommend is maybe just, understanding what care means for different people. People could be at an individual level alone, have loneliness, they live by themselves. Some people are, they're newly married, they're going through, with a partner, they're kind of settling in. Some people are buying a house. Some people are, just going through a lot of change. Some people have to take care of their parents. A lot of people are taking care of their pets as well as their kids. So I think it's just understanding the different, demographics of your organization, and then looking at what are the resources and how you're expressing care with them. The other is, of course, getting a pulse from your managers. And one of the things that, I would encourage you to do is ask your managers, ask a pulse of few of your managers and ask them, like, hey, how are your employees feeling? What are the things that's on top of mind for them? And do they feel that they're being taken care of? Let's go to the next question. So we are seeing less people active on chats and emails and meetings. Is this bad? It's a great question. It's interesting though. I see a variety of both things. So are we seeing, I think as I mentioned earlier, I think it really is, we are seeing less activity, but we're also seeing a lot more focus. So imagine the amount of time that I just spent with you. I don't know how many of you would have noticed this, but when you're actually in discussions now, especially if it's a video conversation, you're not touching your phone anymore because you know that your face is zoomed in. Anytime you move your eyelids, people are going to notice that. So which means you're not engaged at that time. So that's something that's becoming even more prominent, which means our focus has become so stronger. So the positive side of some of this change is that yes, we are paying a lot of attention, which means we don't have to send as many follow-ups and chats and conversations because we are being more present. The second part of it is really about how we're prioritizing in terms of how people are spending that time. So are you having enough meetings where you feel you covered and you checked in with your people? I think disengaging, it's very important to know the difference between how you are engaging and disengaging with people. So if you're not recognizing them enough, or you're seeing that people are just not engaging anymore in the conversation or in a topic or reacting to something, that's probably, I would say, a red flag where you need to step in, talk to the managers, talk to the leaders, and understand. I would strongly encourage skip level meetings as one of the ways where leaders should do one-to-many, where they're just asking, just checking in, and it doesn't have to be work related. It could be anything. It could be just having a 30 minutes Q&A with one of the leaders and saying, I just want to understand how you're doing. Tell me what's on top of your mind. And I think that is going to help get a much better signal, and also give people opportunity to know that, people are there to listen and they're here to go ahead and help us. Again, the next question. So once again, thank you for that question. Wow, there's a lot of questions coming in. So once again, thank you. We'll do our best in the next few minutes that we have together. Next question is, how do we manage bad news, both macro and internal to the company? That's a great question. It's hard. It's hard how we manage bad news. I think the part that I would say is to start and begin with is transparency. I think in my experience, the best examples I have seen in how we've also managed some bad news is really being really transparent about it. I think the moment you see leaders being open and transparent and sharing the news quickly and transparently, and then finally translating, what does it really mean for you? I think what's important is that last piece of that translation as well. If you delay the conversation, then you've probably lost some of the opportunity. So one of the things I would recommend is remember that every change is happening so fast around us, which creates a sense of uncertainty. So what people are really looking for is hope. They're looking for a clear sense of clarity, and they really want a centralized resource where they can ask questions and be heard. So that's where I would encourage you, whether the news is bad, I think the earlier the better. Second is, how are you making sure that you are sharing that information internally first before you share it externally to the public. So you're making sure your employees have an opportunity. And here I would say the key role here is to get a quick buy-in from your managers and leverage and lean on to your managers and leaders in the organizational change. So the more you engage them and equip them with the information and the bad news so they can deal with the information and responses is going to be critical in terms of the success and failure of how well this goes. Next question. So the 3 C's are something that I would like to bring to my company, but I don't think they're ready for the change right now. How can I better influence our leadership of the need for something more prescriptive around our culture? First of all, thank you so much for asking this question. I would challenge you to think a little bit about what is it that you think that you are not ready for when you think about the change. I do contextualize and empathize that absolutely everyone is going to be a very different part of this journey in your organization. So you absolutely will have to look at it in terms of what works for you and what doesn't work for you. So please do keep that in mind. But I do want to challenge you to think about, what part of those, care, culture, and community is part of your organizational values and purpose is that you would want to reinforce at this time and anchor people towards. So when you think about influencing your leadership on the need for being more prescriptive, it goes back to your purpose and culture of your organization and how you want to create that learning agility, how you want to recognize people for what they're doing and how they're stepping up in this hard time. So I would say there are elements of that. But one of the things that I would underscore is going to be community. I think community is going to continue to be, and that connection is going to be the underlying layer that would translate. I would say that would actually cut across no matter what size of the organization you're in and whatever phase of change that you're experiencing. It's going to be extremely important that you could leverage on that so people know that they're not alone and that we are all in this together. All right, we have a couple of more questions, and I also want to be sensitive about the time that we have. So I'm just going to take 2 more questions, and then we'll try to kind of close with a set of resources for you. So next question is, does my talent leave the organization for better culture? Does my top talent lead the organization for the better culture? How do we show this? Well, I think the part of where you will show your culture, as I understand this question, is how you show your culture is really around defining your culture and purpose and how your leaders are transparently every day showing that in their behavior. So a lot of it translates to people around how they're showing up in their behavior on a day-to-day basis, how managers interacting towards individual performance conversations, how they're driving clarity around goals, how you're making sure that you are then backing that up in terms of, whether you have, when you talk about care, how you're showing the benefits that you're providing to them, and the support groups that you have. And then finally, that sense of belonging through community and inclusion. So how are we creating the groups for them to go ahead and give them an opportunity to know that this is unique and different, and your culture is what makes it unique and different. And the values that you have in your organizations are shown by, by role modeling that through your managers, your leaders, and even individuals. I like to call them culture champions. You don't have to be in a position of authority to be a culture champion in an organization. So how are you elevating your culture champions right now in this moment of change? Looking at people who have just stepped out and taken this on as culture carriers, and making sure that you are elevating them and showcasing them and recognizing their efforts, and as they go ahead and exhibit those organizational values. All right, so let's talk about, we're thinking, or the final question. So we're thinking about switching to a stronger L&D program to lead through, to help those with less work now to stay productive and upskill them. How do we do this? Who is doing this well right now? I think a lot of organizations that are doing this well right now. I spoke to a couple of organizations in Asia Pacific. I won't necessarily name all of them, but I would say that there are large and small organizations that are using this as an opportunity, whether you're in retail, some of them even in airlines. I would say, even though despite of all the hardships and changes, they're using this as an opportunity to reskill their employees and see if they can build new capabilities. At the same time, how can they better leverage their talent that they've invested so many years in, who are so aligned to their culture and values? How can they give them a new opportunity? So what I've seen more on the L&D side is really looking at some of the programs around some building core capability, which is having manager-led programs talking about biasness, but also around having them being able to get more equipped around feedback. How do you quickly have more continuous feedback that you can share? How can you drive clarity on asking for information? So if you're an IC, how can you ask for information? How can you ask the right questions from your managers so that you can be more productive? And then also just core skills, some very deep functional skills and capabilities that you can build with them, whether it's in a sales organization, how to sell better, and using marketing as an opportunity to be able to build some marketing skills, or whether you're an engineering organization, you want to using different languages and programming, etc., that you want to be able to teach people, or etc. So it's really around being able to upskill people around some functional skills and some behavioral skills, and being able to keep them occupied. This is such a precious opportunity where you have dedicated time and attention, where you can actually run these sessions and you can help build that capability for years to come in your organization. So I would say that use that as an opportunity. A lot of the models are, again, on demand. Please remember, as I mentioned, going back to micro experiences, and they're creating these learning units, which is short modules, which people can consume at their own convenience. It's going to be hard to bring everybody together at one point in time. So the more experiences where people can self-serve and have it on demand available to them, that would be the one that would create a high level of flexibility, but a much higher level of engagement and activity. And then following through with them and having, some of them are even using chatbots to be able to go ahead and use that effectively to make sure that they can actually have chatbots that are customized and deliver those trainings. One of them is the COVID bot that people are using just from an information standpoint, not necessarily just learning, but if people need information and help, they are using a COVID bot where they can just type into a bot and ask questions. And that can give you a pre-set of canned answers and can respond to you real time. So no matter where you are, you're managing a distributed employee space, especially frontline, you can have a chatbot. And we currently have, in Workplace, we have a chatbot that is being offered by one of our partners absolutely for free as part of the promotion right now. And they're using it for crisis. And some of the organizations, large and small, are actually jumping in and are using it and using it effectively and finding it extremely, extremely helpful, because now they're able to help their employees find the information they need to take care of themselves. All right, so let's talk about, so those are the set of questions that we had. So I'm just going to try to close this session now. Once again, these are the communities that I mentioned. So if you would like to go ahead and join in, please look at the link below. So first is the Workplace for HR customer community. These are HR practitioners and learners. Anybody who wants to learn more about day-to-day practices and learnings and examples, please go ahead and join this group. You can just type in fp.me/Workplace HR, or you could also look at the other group, which is for COVID specifically. It's a multi-company group for COVID, and you just type in fp.me/COVID WP, which is Workplace. So you can join any of these groups and be part of the broader community so we can continue with this conversation. On this note, I'm going to go ahead and start thanking everybody who has been on this journey with us for the last hour. I really want to appreciate the time and attention that you had and your level of engagement. I also look forward to your feedback. So as before we close, I do want to encourage you to go ahead and send me any feedback that you might have. So please take this opportunity. You can feel free. You can even write to me, or you can write it in the comment section. I'm just going to go ahead and also share my email with you in case you want to go ahead and email to me. It's sameerc@fb.com. So just feel free to send me any follow-up questions or thoughts you might have, any feedback you might want to share with us, and we will take that as an learning opportunity so we can continue to learn from those experiences, and hopefully we can go ahead and be able to share more thoughts and ideas and learn from your experiences. If you implemented something and you want to share with us, please go ahead and post it in the communities that I mentioned earlier, or you can just drop me an email as well, and I'll be more than happy to go ahead and share it on your behalf as well. Once again, to all the learners and the builders, I wish you all the very best. I really genuinely, from the bottom of my heart, wish you good health, wish you a lot of success, and wish the well-being of you for you as well as your extended family. Please take good care of yourself. Make sure we are all in this together. And I really, really look forward to coming back and catching up with you soon. So this is Sameer Chaudhary signing off. Once again, thank you very much. A very good afternoon, a very good evening, and a huge, big virtual hug from me to all of you. Thank you very much, and take care of yourself. Goodbye.